If the word sales makes your skin crawl, but you're sick of hearing, "I'll think about it," from your patients or clients who clearly need your help, then this episode of the Simplified Functional Medicine Podcast is going to be a turning point for you. What if I told you that there's a way to triple your high ticket program conversions without pushing, persuading, or feeling like a used car salesman? On today's episode, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on a framework that turns enrollment into effortless alignment for you and finally makes the business side of running a functional medicine program feel natural. Let's get started. So, hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Simplified Functional Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Chad Woolner, along with my good friend, Dr. Andrew Wells. And over the past few years, we have had the opportunity to literally help hundreds of practitioners of all disciplines all across the country be able to help more people. And that includes not just the clinical protocols and strategies, but also the business, the marketing, and the communication systems and strategies that we teach and we share. And on today's episode, this is what we're going to dive deep into, is helping practitioners be able to ultimately help more people by allowing them to get higher conversions. When we say conversions, that means getting more people to say yes to your care recommendations, to pay you, and to be able to work with them, get kind of not just the financial buy-in, but the emotional and mental buy-in as well. And so, Dr. Andrew Wells, welcome to the episode. Tell me your thoughts. Where do we begin in this process when we talk about high ticket conversions? Because I know even that term alone sometimes can be a little bit off-putting to some practitioners. So where do we even begin?
I just want practitioners to understand that this is a really important skill to learn, the skill of sales. And the reason being is the healthcare industry is shifting away from the insurance model and more toward self-pay models. Patients realize that their insurance really doesn't get them a whole lot other than drugs and surgery. And if you don't want that, then oftentimes patients are looking for alternative options, recognizing that those alternative options are going to cost something out of pocket. And oftentimes practitioners feel like asking for money is at odds with taking care of a patient. They feel slimy, they feel awkward. So if you ever feel like just the thought of asking patients for money is weird, or if you have a high ticket program, but whenever you walk into the report of findings room to make recommendations to the patient, if it makes you feel anxious or nervous, or your heart starts racing and you get all kind of bent out of shape about just the thought of asking for money, then this episode is absolutely for you. And what I want you guys to understand, and the reason we're recording this episode, is it doesn't have to make you feel that way. In fact, if you're doing sales the right way, it shouldn't feel awkward or slimy or uncomfortable at all. And like Chad mentioned, there's a framework that we're going to talk about that hopefully will give you a lot more confidence and put you at ease the next time you're about to ask your patients for a lot of money. So that's the purpose of this episode.
Yeah, and I want to start off by telling a story that I think really does set the stage and represents a significant percentage of practitioners that we come across. The other night, I had the opportunity to speak to a local group of healthcare professionals of all disciplines. So it was kind of representative of the practitioners we work with inside of our program, Simplified Functional Medicine. There were nurse practitioners there, a lot of them. There were medical doctors, there were chiropractors, there were physical therapists, there were pharmacists, there were health coaches. Just about every discipline was represented at this dinner talk that I was at. And I spoke on a variety of different things, including leveraging AI technology in helping us with ultimately helping more patients. And at the end of this dinner, I stuck around and was answering questions, and a nurse practitioner was talking to me. She was in the process of leaving a group functional medicine practice that she was a part of. And one of the primary reasons she was leaving, in her own words, was she was telling me she felt at odds with the fact that she felt like there was pressure from the top of this group to enroll patients into these functional medicine programs, these high ticket programs. And again, by defining that, I don't know exactly what the price point was, but we'll just say more than likely a couple $1,000s for an upfront program that included whatever it included, testing and supplements and all those different things. And so she felt at odds with that because she felt, in her words, that she was feeling pressured, and then in turn was having to put pressure on the patients or clients to enroll in the program, and she didn't like that. And so what she decided to do was she decided she was going to go on her own. She was wanting to go all virtual, and she was wanting to basically structure it such that no longer was she going to present to patients a prepaid program, but rather she was just going to have straight a fee for service model and or time. So it was basically, you come, these are the prices. If you want to get tested, it's this much for this test, and this test, and then this much for my time on the first visit, and then any subsequent visit thereafter, it's going to be this much money for my time and or an additional fee for whatever products or things that I recommend. There'll be a price there as well for those things. So that was her kind of model. That was her response. And unfortunately, what this represents is kind of a classic kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I tried to explain to her briefly. Obviously, I didn't have a tremendous amount of time, but that's, I think, to a certain extent, what sparked this conversation is what I was, or this episode, I should say, is what I tried to explain to her is it's not that model is flawed. It's that the way in which it was carried out more than likely is what caused the disconnect and or the lack of congruency and or what maybe felt less than ethical or congruent with you in terms of where you're at. And we see this a lot, especially with nurse practitioners, because in general, most nurse practitioners that we encounter are very heart-centered practitioners. That's why they got into that profession in the first place. They genuinely care for people. And so, Andrew, let's maybe start there in terms of the way in which the program is designed, or at least the way in which it's structured or presented makes all the difference in the world in terms of like why they might feel incongruent with it, why they might feel like it's high pressure, and why they might have reluctance to presenting a program in the first place.
Yeah, the main issue that we're seeing practitioners struggle with is they don't really know what the patient wants. So if your idea is the patient comes in not to find out what they want or need and just sell them on a program, it's going to feel really salesy because you don't know what they want. Now, let me use a kind of a parallel analogy here with sales. You would assume that the higher the price point, the more pressure. But in fact, that's not the case. The example I'm going to use here is if you've ever purchased a home, maybe you spent $200,000, $500,000, $1 million on a home, that's a high ticket sale. Now, if you go to a real estate agent, their job is to sell you a home, but not just any home, the home that you want. And what you'll find is that real estate agents who do a good job never pressure somebody into something. The way they start their sales process is doing a deep dive on what the client wants first. So before they start touring you around a city and showing you homes, they first sit you down and ask what you want. So what size home do you want? What's your budget? How many rooms do you want? Do you want a yard? Do you want to be close to a school? They ask all these really fact-finding questions, and they really ask a lot of open-ended questions. What are you looking for? And so, for example, let's say the couple walks in and they're in their early 30s and they drive a minivan. The assumption might be, well, they may have kids. So that's a question that the real estate agent is going to ask. Do you have kids? Yes, we have 3 kids. Okay, great. Are schools important to you? Yes, very much. Okay, great. So the real estate agent is starting to narrow down the criteria. Is a backyard important to you? Yes, a backyard is important, and we want something that has a fence and a pool. Okay, now that narrows down the criteria even more. And so eventually what happens is the real estate agent, after asking a series of questions, has a really clear picture of what the client wants. Then they go out and show them various houses that they think are going to meet their criteria. And what happens is when the client, the home buyer, sees the home that fits their criteria, all of a sudden there's this wave of emotion that happens with the buyers. It's like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I thought my home was going to be. Or the opposite of like, this is not at all what I wanted to see. And there's an emotion, the buying emotion that happens there. Now, once the home buyer decides, yes, this is the home for me, Then it's just a matter of figuring out how they're going to pay for it. Are they going to pay for it in cash? Are they going to do a mortgage? Is it going to be a 10-year mortgage, 30? So all these different buying criteria questions are going to take place. Now, at no point in that process, even though this is a multi-six-figure purchase, is there any kind of high pressure situation. In fact, if the real estate agent becomes a high pressure salesperson, there's a good chance that the home buyers are going to walk. They're going to go find a different agent. So the question for you is, if you're selling a program that's 1% or 0.5% of the cost of a home, then I would argue that shouldn't feel very pressury at all, because it's not. If you are doing a high pressure sales process, you're doing it all wrong. And so I just want you to keep in mind that little. Just remember the real estate agent analogy that we talked about. If you ever feel like you're in a high pressure situation, so what I wanted to really talk about here is the value of using scripting. Now, oftentimes when I use the word scripting, like I get a pucker up reaction from practitioners, like, oh, I don't want to use scripting. Scripting makes you sound robotic. I don't want to practice.
It's not authentic. It doesn't feel genuine.
Yes. And if that's you, I'm going to tell you just flat out, that's wrong. You have to use scripting. If you walk into a meeting with a potential patient and you're winging it, you're either going to be really good at winging it, or you're not going to be able to ask the right questions and find out the right information. People that use scripting that haven't practiced their scripting, they're going to sound robotic. That's not what I'm talking about here. I see really well-intentioned practitioners like either using scripting or trying to develop their own scripting, and they just haven't practiced it, so they stink at it. But even if you don't have a written script, I promise you, you're using scripting. You're saying the same things over and over again, generally speaking, but it's just not good. And so the value of using and practicing, most importantly, practicing your scripting, is it takes all the pressure off of you on what you're going to say and how you're going to guide the conversation. Practitioners that are really practiced in their scripting, they're so much smoother than people that aren't. And this is really important, because this initial visit with a patient is going to involve a little bit of tension, because you're talking about personal things. You're talking about a health issue that they're suffering with. They may share personal things with you about how that's affected their life. It's a private conversation, and they also recognize that this is going to cost something. So the quality of that communication that happens between the practitioner and the patient very much matters. And if you're going into that conversation and you're winging it, it's not going to go over well. And the patient may perceive you as awkward or weird, or they don't know what they're talking about. And that's not the kind of mood that you want to portray to the patient. You want to portray somebody that is confident, that is smart, that is prepared, that's done their homework. And that's the thing that you have to practice. So, Chad, you were going to say something there.
No, keep going.
Okay, great. So you've got your scripting, which is essentially a communication roadmap. Now, here's the key to a great high-ticket sales process. It all happens basically within the first 5 minutes. If you get the first 5 minutes right, everything else becomes really easy. So what you're going to do is you're going to walk into the room with your new potential patient. And what you're going to do is you're going to share as much information about that patient that you can possibly share with them. If you can articulate their problem and what they're dealing with better than they can, that's a fantastic way to build rapport. If you build rapport, you build trust. If you build trust, it's easier to sell stuff. So the way that you do that is take your time reviewing the patient intake paperwork before you walk in the room. Don't just walk in there kind of half-ass reviewing their chart before you walk in. Do your research. How old are they? How long have they had the condition? What are all the OPQ, RST information pieces that you want to know about the patient? Where do they work? Do they have kids? I would even, I know this sounds really weird. I would go online and look up the patient before you walk in the room. Look them up online. Look them up on Facebook. What you're trying to do is get a feel and a sense for who this person is before you walk in and meet them for the first time. And so gather up all the information, memorize as much of that stuff as you can, and then you're going to walk in the room and say, hey, my name is Dr. Wells. You must be Chad.
Yep.
Hey, Chad, great to meet you. Welcome to our office. So happy that you're here. I wanted to start off by just taking a couple minutes to review what I know about you so far. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Great. So, Chad, I see that you came in here and then I'm going to XYZ, I'm going to review everything that I've memorized in his paperwork back to Chad. And then I'm going to ask him a really simple question at the end of that little monologue that I'm about to do. Hey, Chad, how did I do so far?
Great.
Awesome. Was there anything else that I didn't cover that you wanted me to know?
No, that's it. You hit it. You nailed it.
Okay. So guys, that first 5 minutes is key. Now think of social situations. If you meet somebody for the first time, how long does it take for you to decide whether you like or dislike that person? What do you think, Chad?
In an instant, everybody,
In an instant.
whether they realize it or not, it happens
Yep.
in an instant.
I love asking this question to women. They're like, oh, they don't even have to say anything. I know exactly. I know exactly if I like that person or not. It's a mood. It's a feeling. It's a vibe that you get from somebody, whether they open their mouth or not. You know if you like that person, generally speaking, within less than 5 seconds. Yeah. So how you walk in the room, how you make eye contact, how you shake hands, how you review that patient's information, they're deciding right then and there if you're going to be their practitioner or not. If you walk in unprepared, it's going to seem awkward. They're not going to like you. If you walk in prepared, you're going to seem confident. They were much, much more likely to like you as long as you don't mess up the rest of it. So that's a really key part. So that's part number 1, be prepared. Part number 2, this is where most practitioners completely fall apart, is figuring out what the patient's goals are. Now, here's not typically the goal. We assume sometimes that the goal is, like, let's say Chad came into my office and he's dealing with fatigue. Chronic fatigue is his main complaint. So Chad, so you've been dealing with chronic fatigue for the last 4 years. I'm assuming your goal is to not feel fatigued anymore, correct?
Yes.
Right. Chad's good at playing along.
Sure.
Yeah. So, or if the problem is a thyroid problem or a digestive problem, we just assume that the patient's goal is to reverse that symptom. And sometimes that's correct.
And that's exactly it. The assumption is by default, the goal is symptom relief or even symptom elimination, right? If they can eliminate the symptoms, then that's the end goal. And that's a very, very safe assumption, but that 9 times out of 10 is a wrong assumption because that's not the real root issue. And this is the whole heart of what Dr. Wells is getting at here. So keep going.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so they're there because they want a resolution to their health issue. That's kind of assumed, right? But what we really want to find out is what their goal is around that thing, around that health condition. Now, what I hear a lot of docs saying they make assumptive comments like, "Oh, that must really affect you at work, or that must really affect you at home, or that must be really frustrating." We're assuming that, but that may not be the case. It may not affect them at work. It may not affect them. So oftentimes practitioners are kind of reaching out and grasping for straws when they're trying to find out the patient's goals. But what we want to do is ask better open-ended questions. It's questions like, why is it important for you to resolve your chronic fatigue issue? And then be quiet, just pause. And they may say something like really superficial, like, well, it stinks to be tired. Yeah, I totally understand that. Tell me more about that. This is where I say you put on your therapist hat. If you've ever been to like a counselor or a therapist, they don't do a lot of talking. They do a lot of listening and they ask a lot of really good questions. Yeah. Tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? What would success look like for you? So if you could paint a perfect picture, and let's say we fast forward a year from now, what does success look like for you, Chad? What does a success look like for you, Mrs. Jones, the patient? And let them tell you in their own words what success is. And if you can quantify it, that's even better. So let's say the patient says it's on a severity level, it's a 7 out of 10. Wow, that sounds horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. That's bad. What would you like it to be on a scale of 1 to 10? Don't assume 0. They may say, well, if it could be a 3 out of 10, I would be elated. Wow, okay, 3 out of 10, that would be success for you. Is there any reason why you wouldn't pick 2 or 1 or a 0 out of 10? And find that information out. So when you're asking patients what their goals are, and you can be very explicit when the patient comes in, hey, Chad, I really want to find out what your goals are. When you ask that question, just know that most patients really haven't thought about goals. If you're walking down the street and you just ask any human being like, hey, what's your goal this year? Most people won't be able to tell you that because they haven't thought about it.
And here's
when
the
you're asking
kicker too
people
that I
about
want to
health
add to
goals,
this. Yeah, the kicker that I want to add to this is the reason why most patients haven't thought of this or clients haven't thought of this is because most practitioners haven't bothered to take the time to really get to know these things. And this is really the key driver and what really elevates you and allows you to be able to be in a position to sell a quote unquote high ticket program, is because when you take that time to thoroughly understand what they really truly do want, number one, you stand out amongst all of the other practitioners that they have likely already seen because most haven't bothered to take the time to figure that out. And number two, you get to the heart of the matter of what truly really does matter to them, i.e., what they do value. And this is the other thing. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here, Andrew, or not. But the other thing I wanted to point out is it's not that patients aren't willing to put forth money. It's that they're not willing to put forth money for things they don't value. We're always ready and willing to pay top dollar for things that matter to us, but only if it's something that really truly matters to us. And if you don't bother to figure out what really truly matters, what's really motivating and driving that patient or client in front of you, you're never going to be able to present a solution that they're going to really truly value and want to invest in. And this is where the friction and or the pressure and or the awkwardness comes into play, is because what you're doing is you're presenting something that you assume and or not even assume, you hope that they want. And sometimes it works, but most of the time for most practitioners, it doesn't. And this is where the awkwardness and cheesiness and high pressure feeling, all of the feelings of anxiety in our gut that we feel with sales comes from, is because you never took the time to truly get to the heart of the matter of what they really do value, what really matters to them. Because once you get to that, the whole presentation of a high ticket program becomes infinitely more easy and it feels more natural because it's congruent. The solution matches with what they actually want. Imagine that, presenting to the person in front of you the thing that they actually want. Imagine that. Yeah, so kind of logical.
Oftentimes we're always thinking only as a practitioner. We're not thinking like a patient. I've heard practitioners say, well, I would never pay $4,000 for a sleep program, or I would never pay $4,000 for a digestive wellness program. And I asked the practitioner, well, have you ever had a sleep problem? No. Have you ever had a digestive problem? No. Well, of course you wouldn't pay that because you've never had that before.
Yeah.
And understand, like, the patients are coming because they want help. They want this problem solved. All we have to do is just find out what they really want and then present a solution that gets them to their goal. And stop thinking like the doctor and stop making value assumptions for the patient. Like, why would they ever pay that much money? Well, it's not your decision. It's their decision. They get to decide. Yeah. And worst case scenario, guys, if you feel really pressure, like if you feel like, well, what if they say no? That's the worst thing that's going to happen is they say, well, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'm going to try something different. Okay, well, you haven't lost anything, right? They get to make the decision.
Yeah.
What doesn't work is trying to pressure a patient into making a decision. That doesn't work. So if you ever feel like you're like, I got to really push here, you don't have to do that. In fact, doing that actually will mess up the conversion process.
Yeah.
So just like Dr. Woolner mentioned, is find out what they want, present a solution that will likely get them to the desired result, share with them how long it's going to take and the price, and let them make a decision. So the last part, if you were to look at a timeline in terms of pressure, there should be no pressure, by the way, during the whole process, but there is a little bit of tension. The tension builds up in the beginning. The tension is, well, why are you here? What do you want? And figuring out if we can deliver that, asking sometimes hard questions. And as you go through that buying process with the patient, the tension should actually go down until the end is where we ask for money and they get to tell you yes or no. And if they say yes, but I'm not sure I'm going to pay for it, then you just go through different options, financing options or monthly options that they can do that works with their budget. That's it,
and guys. I think it's important too, to kind of wrap this up. I think it's important that we clarify terminology because terminology really does matter. Definitions matter. There's a vast difference between pressure and tension. And we want to explain the difference between these two so you can understand and have a clear idea of what we mean. Pressure is artificial, and pressure is the result of you in trying to impose upon the patient your hopes, anticipations, expectations, and desires on them. It may be in their best interest. It may not be in their best interest, but really at the end of the day, it's you trying to impose something on them. That's pressure, right? Tension, on the other hand, is a natural result of you clarifying and communicating with the patient and getting a clear picture of, number one, their current state, where they're currently at. And then number two, that's an anchor point. Number two, think about a rubber band being stretched. Number two, where they want to be. And again, not what you're supposing or assuming or implying on, again, assuming on them and are you coming to the table, this is what I think you want. No, through proper communication, number one, getting clarity on, is this where you currently are? How did I do? Yep, you nailed it. You really understand where I'm at. And then number two, do we really understand what you want? What are your goals? What does that really look like to you? Can we quantify that? And then can we establish how motivated you are, what you're willing to do to be able to do that? Are you willing to invest your time to be able to solve this? Are you willing to put forth the necessary and requisite energy and effort to be able to do that if we can help you in this process? Do you have realistic expectations, or are you just expecting a magic bullet or a magic pill that's going to solve this magically for you, right? Setting those clear expectations. And then what that does is that creates that second anchor point. And now all of a sudden what you have is natural tension. Think about a rubber band again. Anchor point number one, where they currently are. Anchor point number two, where they really want to be. And if you can establish a sufficiently believable solution for them that they can trust and believe in. And again, if you've done everything right that Dr. Wells talked about in the beginning, you've actually listened, you've really taken the time to understand them, you've articulated that understanding to them, there's going to be trust that's already there. So now all of a sudden, it's just a simple matter of presenting a viable solution to them that, again, creates that second anchor point to helping them get to where they want to be. And here's the last kicker. Tension naturally seeks resolution. Think about that for a moment. Tension naturally seeks resolution. And more often than not, the way to that resolution is the patients doing what they need to do to seek that resolution. Pressure, on the other hand, seeks escape. Pressure seeks escape. So when people are feeling pressure, what they want to do is find the nearest exit to alleviate and relieve that pressure. So pressure bad. That results in people not converting. Tension good. Tension seeks resolution. People will pay to resolve the tension. People will pay to follow the plan and the program to get the results that they're after. And so massive difference between pressure and tension. Understanding those two things is the key to helping patients reach those goals and massively tripling your conversions.
Great. So just to recap, proper mindset, being prepared, making a really good impression in the first 5 minutes, following a script, practicing and your roadmap and your script, and then making sure that you're finding out what the client or the patient wants. What are their needs? So remember the real estate analogy. And I would say the last thing here, guys, is if you don't identify as a salesperson, great. In fact, we find that most people that do well with this kind of approach are actually very heart-centered practitioners. So the one thing we haven't talked about is if you don't care about the person sitting in front of you, this is going to seem like a sales process because there's no bigger reason why behind what you're doing. So if you're sitting here listening to this and you're saying, I care about my patients, I am heart-centered, I got into healthcare because I want to help people, then just know that you're probably going to be better than the quote unquote high pressure salesperson just because naturally you care. And that's the one thing that you can't teach. It's either there or it's not there. And if it's not there, you better get really good at sales if you don't care about people. If you do care about people, this process should be very easy and should feel very comforting to you and also your patient.
Absolutely. So if this resonates with you, and if you'd like to learn more about what we do at Simplified Functional Medicine, we utilize proven scripts and proven systems and proven processes to help our practitioners. In fact, each and every week, we jump on group calls with our practitioners in what are called patient communication training calls. That is headed up by the master himself, Dr. Andrew Wells here, in helping practitioners get better at this process and refine those skills. And so again, if this is resonating with you, if you want to increase conversions and not feel salesy, come jump on a free discovery call with Dr. Andrew Wells here at Simplified Functional Medicine. Find out a little bit more about what we're doing and if this might be a good fit for you. And guess what he will do? He will go through a process not too dissimilar from what we're talking about here. He's going to find out what your goals are. He's going to find out what you really want. And then what we'll do is we'll present a solution to help you achieve and reach what you want, if it looks like this is going to be a good fit for you. So thanks for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode.